This is the Normally Necessary podcast, brought to you in part by the Gumball Head Sobriety Society. It sure is. Good Tuesday morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's April 8th, 2025. I'm your host, Gumball Head, stopping in for another episode of Road Rants. Thank you for joining us. We hope that everybody had the opportunity to listen to our podcast we dropped yesterday, the 7th of April, with the band out of New York, The Theorists. Stay tuned. We have multiple interviews with bands coming up here in the future. We also have some interviews coming up with some of our friends from overseas, as well as right here in the USA. We're going to be interviewing Inkshift, the artist, the illustrator, the elusive, amazing, wonderful mustache. He has worked with Cartoon Network. He has worked with Marvel Comics. And we are proud to say that we are going to be doing an interview with him about Speedo Frog's Treehouse. And that's a coloring book. We've purchased that ourselves. We've enjoyed coloring in that coloring book. And we're going to be talking to him in the future about mental health and how TikTok has actually helped him with that mental health. We fully believe that social media can be used as a good tool for people in their mental health and accelerate their possibilities in their employment and increase the lucrativity in the job market, in a job market that is pretty volatile. And not only that, but TikTok creates opportunity for people that have niches, and not just TikTok, but all social media outlets. But there's only a few that actually become famous or become financially secure as a result of social media. So we're going to be talking to him about that here in the upcoming future. We have some bands on the way, like I said, and we also have some other people. Kodak, another artist and illustrator friend of ours, and a few others. We also have a couple of mental health specialists coming up. We have a psychiatrist coming out of California who works primarily with the neurodivergent field in Bakersfield, and we're working on a podcast with them, as well as the upcoming re-recording of the Chad's podcast. The Chad is a RC enthusiast, but most of all, he's a father. He's a husband, and he is a really laid-back, cool dude. He's a friend of ours. And he's going to give us some information about the remote control car community, as well as safety when it comes to the equipment that is involved in that community. So we're going to start this podcast off with also mentioning our good friends over at Modern Viking Beard Care Company, modernvikingllc.com. If you use the code Gumball10, get 10% off your order. Simple as that. In the end of the order, you put in the code, you get 10% off. They take that 10% off the order just for you, for being friends with us, and for our affiliate ship with them. And then if you like, you can forward on that 10% savings right on over to our Venmo page, which is available on our link tree. Guys, we are looking down the barrel of a 30-degree day right now. It's cold outside here in Ohio. It is, the other day we hit almost 80 degrees. Today it was mid-20s going through the night, and we're nearing 30 now, coming into the morning. Supposed to be only a high of 55 today, so it's going to be a little bit chilly. And I know that the weather may not matter a whole lot, but going back, reflecting in the future, we are able to gauge the mentality of ourselves individually based on the weather. So that's why we give the weather. We give the time usually, or at least the date, and it gives us a reference point for the future. So when we look back, we can see what it was like. And it's a good opportunity for us to kind of remind ourselves that when it's 85 degrees in the middle of summer and it's nice outside, listening to our podcast, you can reflect back on how crappy it was a few months ago and prepare yourself for those months that are coming up. So we look forward to reminiscing with you all here at a later time. Today's first mind getting out of bed was noisy kids, man. We woke up this morning, the two little ones. Well, first of all, our baby, our child, our 1-year-old, she didn't sleep very well last night. From about 3 o'clock on until I got out of bed this morning, she tossed and turned and kicked and yelled and hollered and grunted and cried and fussed. And made for a little bit of a difficult sleeping arrangement this morning, but ultimately the last couple hours of sleep ended up being, somewhat decent. did that affect my day? Yeah, I'm sure it does. I'm sure it affects my day every day when we struggle with the way the weather is, and we struggle with what time we go to bed. I usually aim to be in bed by 10 p.m., but things happen to where most of the time I'm not in bed by 10 p.m. Most of the time I plan to be in bed by 10, and then it's 11 o'clock, and by the time we get settled in and the eyes get closed, it's 11:30. So it's just the nature of the beast, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that has that problem. But one of the things that we can do is when we crawl into bed, just put that phone down. I picked mine up to reset my alarm for today, and next thing you know, it's an hour later. And I can't believe how much time I've lost on my phone. I've been watching very closely my phone usage on the apps that we have installed on the phone, and man, we spend a lot of time during the day on our phone, whether we realize it or not. And the biggest thing about that is how much time is spent on your phone versus working? How much time is spent on your phone versus spending time with your family? How much time is spent on your phone not spent on doing your hobbies? And one of the big things lately that I've been learning is when people do not get the opportunity to respond right away, people get anxious. There's a lot of anxiety involved in slow to no responses when it comes to text messages. And I found myself not caring so much when I don't get a response right away or in a very short, timely fashion. It happens a lot at work where my coworkers will get wrapped up in something and they won't respond back to me for an hour or so. But I always feel that it's courteous to respond back right away, so I do it. But the reality of things is it courtesy? Or is it them being mindful of themselves? If this is something that can wait till later, then I'll text you later. Otherwise, I'm just going to go about doing my thing and take care of what I'm working on. So I admire that in a lot of people out there that have the ability to just take a break from their phone and continue on with their day. And I will be spending most of my day without my phone in my hand today and doing my best to kind of avoid the phone at any cost so that I can just focus on my work, focus on my craft, and doing a good job. Got some side jobs coming up. I do the same thing on side jobs because realistically, I like getting into the homes, getting my work done, and getting out of there. I don't want to stick around. I don't want to hang out. I don't want to continue doing things and working on things because of the delay that's brought on about by a phone. So technology is a wicked thing when not used appropriately and not utilized properly, and that will always be a selling point for me when it comes to overcoming adversity and focusing on the things that we need to focus on. Our 3-year-old and our 5-year-old are absolutely every single morning. They wake up, first thing on their mind is that cell phone, the first thing on their mind is that tablet, and a lot of that is the programming that we have done, but we've also noticed the behavior. We've talked about this on multiple different podcasts, but obviously if we're going to talk about it to redundancy, then there's an issue, and we're working very, very hard on changing those behaviors. One of the biggest successes that we've had lately is our 5-year-old, #RennieTalk. We'll get up from the table after a meal without permission. He'll just get up and go about doing what he was doing. He'll get up and he'll grab the remote control, change the channel on the TV. He'll get up and grab the tablet, sit down and start looking at things. And we've been working very, very hard on changing that behavior by just having him come back to the table with us. Understanding that when everybody's done eating, when everybody's dishes are done, and when you ask for permission to get up to go, that's when things change. That's when we say, yeah, sure, go ahead. And here's the biggest thing about that. If you ask for permission and we say yes, great, do it. If we say no, don't fuss. Don't throw your hands up in distress because you got to wait 3-4 more minutes. We're working on that patient aspect with our children, and a lot of parents don't do that. How many of you were raised to ask to be excused from the table? How many of you were raised to be mindful of the other people that are eating still, or that there's conversations happening, and you need to be mindful and you need to be courteous of those things? How many of you were raised to understand that, that pause in your day, that focus and attention that the parents are giving the children and the children are giving the parents. I learned a lot sitting around a table. I learned a lot sitting at a table chatting with my parents. I learned a lot sitting at a table and chatting with my grandparents. When I graduated from the kid table to the big table, that was a monumental thing for me. And growing up, we had the kid table. The kid table was in the other room. And the biggest thing about that was I didn't want to ever sit at the kid table, but I constantly got placed there. And the thing about that was when we finished our eating, kids were allowed to come to the table, but only after the meal was done. And it was so crazy because our family was huge. And it was crazy because once everybody was done eating, that's when the kids were allowed to come to the table. But you could not do that if there were still adults eating at surrounding the table, especially at holidays. Holidays and birthdays. Birthdays were one thing because usually if we did have a meal, it was, something along the lines of sloppy joes or, something like chili or soup. But at Thanksgiving, there were multiple plates and multiple dishes placed at the table. The kids got to be sat down first. And we were allowed to get up and go play, but we were not allowed at the grown-up table until all the grown-ups were done eating. So that taught us patience. That taught us to ask. That taught us to be observant of our surroundings. And nowadays, we just don't have that. There are people that are impatient. I, for one, am a very fast eater, and I am not a picky eater. So I will put corn and potatoes and stuffing and turkey all in one forkful and shove it all in my gullet and eat it down real quick. That's just because there are so many minutes in a day that go unused in a positive way, so that I hurry up and do things that I enjoy, but not as important as playing with my toys, not as important as reading another chapter of my book or drawing another picture or responding to a text as I get older. Our youth goes away, and it's key to educate our children when they're in their youth, because that's what's important. That's where we learn. That's where we start those habits and good behaviors is in our youth. And our children are starting to learn that a little bit more and more as they get older, because we get frustrated with the technology. We get frustrated with the behavior that brings upon our children based on that technology. And, again, I state this to the fact that we talk about this a lot. We talk about this multiple times, per month about that technology with children, but that just goes to show how important that is to help our kids to understand. If you want to change that behavior, you need to change the surroundings. You need to change the environment. And, of course, that ties into us as well as adults as we get older, as we work through things. So be mindful of that. So that is one key factor in making those changes for the better. We need to make sure that we're observant of our surroundings and our behaviors, our reflections on those behaviors, and our presentations of those behaviors towards our children, towards those people that surround us. Because if we don't change that behavior, the behavior is going to maintain. Now, if we apply that to other aspects in our lives, such as recovery, such as our job performance, such as our interactivity with other people, we'll notice a big change in life. And I saw an interview the other day with Bam Margera, and Bam Margera said that Steve-O told him, if you stay sober, cool things are going to happen. And as Bam is going through these recoveries, he found that passion again for skateboarding after his last major relapse. He's found that passion again for music. He's found that passion again for a lot of things that surround him in a day-to-day life. And he's getting better as a result. I have never been a fan of Bam Margera. I've never cared for him. And Steve-O, I never really liked Steve-O. I always thought that the cast of Jackass were all jackasses. Again, another thing where it's like, okay, well, as we grow and we mature, we understand that if it's going to make money, do it. If it's going to make a lot of money, do it even harder. And that's why Jackass was so successful. Well, what are you doing to make yourself successful? Aside from the fact of showing up for work every single day, getting paid to do your job, and then going home and doing what you do. Right now is the time to invest. Right now is the best time to invest any additional funds that you have in the stock market, because as the stock market's low, you can buy low and you can invest low, and then you turn around and you sell it when it increases. You look at 3 to 5 years from now, that stock market's going to increase, and the investments that you made in 2025 are going to be sold at a profit in 2028. The downside is we see all of those numbers go up and down so frequently that we get nervous, and when we start to see things plummet, instead of taking the opportunity to buy more and more and more, we sell. We get scared. We do the panic sale. But your 401k and your Social Security have done that your entire life, and you just don't realize it. But 3 years from now, any stocks that you buy today will be better. They will look better. And that's just macroeconomics and microeconomics. It's just the way it works in society. But because we all decide that we want to get up from the dinner table as soon as we're done eating so that we can go play with our new toy that we got from Christmas or go hang out with our cousin, that is why we get so anxious about selling. That's why we get so anxious about finances, and we are quick to make a decision based on our experiences from the past. That's our lesson today, guys. That's all I've got. And until our paths cross, stay strong, stay focused, stay sober, much love. We'll see you guys soon.